Hello everyone and welcome back to DiabloCast, your Diablo 3 podcast. Here we share with you our thoughts and opinion on any recent news and updates in the Diablo 3 universe. As always, I'm your host, Dennis Force Duhamel, and with me as always we've got Kevin Sixen Carlino.
What's up, guys?
And this week we do have a special guest from DiabloFans.com. He is known as PhrozenDragon, and he is basically the lore buff on the website. So why don't you say hello to everyone, PhrozenDragon?
Hi, everybody.
And he is our first international guest here on the podcast. PhrozenDragon, you are a resident of Sweden, is that correct?
That is correct.
Very cool. I know you spent some time in the States on some travel abroad. So what were your experiences in the United States? All right, that's about all I expected. So anyways,
must be a Swedish thing, right?
let's just go ahead and jump right into this week's topics. This week we're going to be talking about the 1 million Facebook like program, basically the Facebook like program on the Diablo Facebook page. Also going to be talking about BlizzCon ticket sales, and then finally, thanks to our special guest here, PhrozenDragon, we're actually going to spend some time discussing Diablo 3 lore. So with that said, just go ahead and start right off with our first topic, which is going to be the Facebook Diablo like program. So over the course of, I want to say the past couple of months, there's been an initiative that was brought about by Blizzard on the Diablo Facebook page. And the way it worked is every 25,000 likes that they received, I think it was past the 50,000 mark. Was that correct, Kevin? I don't remember. Was it at 50,000 that it started?
It was 450,000.
Wow, I'm way off. So starting at...
Yes. We've been doing it for about 3 months now, a little less than 3 months.
Okay, so starting at 450,000. It's been a little less than 3 months, and it was for every 25,000 likes above that 450,000 mark, they released new pieces of artwork. And then the idea was that at 1 million likes, we're going to get some big grand reveal, or at least that was kind of the implication. Well, the reveal, we hit up 1 million likes, and the reveal was old artwork in basically wallpaper form, and that was it. Now I know, if we look at the prior kind of initiatives or programs that this worked with in both StarCraft and Warcraft, they received wallpapers at 1 million likes as well. That's correct.
And the Blizzard page.
Yeah.
Blizzard page as well. So all three of their previous Facebook pages have just received wallpapers on the 1 millionth like. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I guess I was hoping for something cool like a video. I was just expecting a wallpaper, and I've been saying this for months now,
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at their prior programs along that same line, that's what it was. It was just wallpapers as well. But for one reason or another, people were expecting betas. They were expecting like crazy tutorial videos, demos, like just absurdity, And so when we received wallpapers, okay, most people, that's going to dumb down their expectations as is. But on top of that, it was old artwork. I mean, this is all character artwork that has been out for quite some time now.
In fact, this is the artwork that we're using in our DiabloCast background image right now.
Yeah, exactly. The bits and pieces of each of the character artwork. I mean, that's basically what was released in wallpaper form, just one for each of the characters. So there was kind of a backlash and outcry. I know there were a lot of people upset with it. And how about you, Frozen? What were your opinions on what was released initially for that Facebook like program?
Well, I mean, like a lot of other people, I was disappointed. I mean, I wasn't expecting necessarily like beta or stuff like that, but maybe a video or at least some, like a couple of unreleased concept art pieces. Mm-hmm. But then again, I had no idea that the StarCraft pages and Warcraft pages had received wallpapers. That kind of went under my radar. So, I mean, my expectations would probably have been a bit more realistic had I picked up on that.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I think part of the overall problem with people's complaints is that I'm sure that there are a lot of Diablo fans in your position who weren't necessarily following the other franchises' Facebook-like programs, and they didn't realize that same thing. I mean, in all honesty, right now, before the beta starts, I'm going to say that a majority of the people following Diablo are just hardcore Diablo fans. Not so much just all-around Blizzard fans, for the most part. That's not going to be all-encompassing. It's not going to be for everyone, but for the most part, most people following are just Diablo fans. So maybe again,
without a doubt.
Yeah, they just didn't. They just didn't realize. They just didn't know. So yeah, it was wallpapers. We received wallpapers, but there's a glimmer of hope here because in response to kind of the big kind of negative response in terms of what we received. In fact, there's people all over the forum saying that those wallpapers were fake. It was shenanigans, tomfoolery.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's none of those things. There's a list of people, the fan sites and kind of press people who receive the emails with that with those images throughout the course of this program. I know that you yourself, Kevin, get the emails for it. I know CyberDragon, I get emails for it. I mean, we're kind of part of the list of people who receive that. And so once we hit 1 million, those are the images we received. But because of the people kind of complaining about it, they decided
anticlimactic ending is kind of what it was.
Yeah, because people were expecting a lot, and then to kind of get brought down to, hey, you've already seen this stuff before. We've got some new imagery. Why don't you go ahead and tell them about that, Kevin?
Right. So just what was it, like 10 minutes or so ago, Bash Yuck sent us all an email saying basically that, okay, we know you guys were all kind of disappointed. It was very anticlimactic and yada, yada, yada. Here's a never-before-seen image of Tyrael by Richard Brom. And basically he made it very clear that it wasn't a concept art. What it was is that it's Brom's artistic interpretation of how the Archangel of Justice looks. Now, I mean, what this means for the game is just that he'll look pretty cool in the game. I mean, it doesn't really mean much of anything, but it's a pretty sweet image.
Yeah. I think one of the main points in him mentioning something like that is to say that this isn't necessarily how we should expect him to look. In saying that it's not concept art, it means that this is not the game's particular art direction. This is just Brom, the particular artist. This is his interpretation of it.
Right.
So if people are thinking, well, is this how Tyrael's going to look in the game? No, not at all. That's the specific implication is that it's just his interpretation. Now, so with the new piece out, are you a little bit happier with the situation, Frozen?
Well, I mean, it does kind of look like you'd think Tyrael would look. I mean, if you compare to the main page and you compare to the games, I mean, it's kind of along the same lines, so it's rather accurate, I'd say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I definitely like that we got some extra art. I mean, I think it says, I'd like to think the Blizzard kind of felt like, well, the StarCraft pages and Warcraft pages, they got wallpapers. I mean, people are going to realize that Diablo is going to get wallpapers too,
right?
And then they maybe miscalculated and realized, okay, here we got you something anyway. That's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah, no, it is. And I something that I really like, I just like that I like different interpretations of characters within the Blizzard franchises. I know specifically with the first part of the Lore series that we just recently released, I believe like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, all of that, with the exception of the map of Sanctuary and Tristram Cathedral at the end, all of the artwork within that were all original pieces, and I just loved. That whole project took about a month of having the separate artist work on all those pieces, and I loved seeing those separate interpretations of different characters. I just think it's really cool to get someone's little twist on a character, and that's part of the reason why I'm actually really pleased with this recently released piece of artwork, I would have to say.
Yeah, that was great artwork.
Yeah, no, definitely, no doubt about that. Definitely, huge props to those guys. Really unbelievable. Yeah, so there you have it. So yes, we do have some more artwork. If you were displeased with the with what we initially received for the 1 million likes for the Diablo Facebook page, there is some new things for you to take a look at. So next we're going to be just talking about the BlizzCon ticket sales. Now BlizzCon ticket sales are all but over officially as of now. The sales did take place last week, and it's done. It's over with. You can't really purchase any more through Blizzard themselves. However, eBay is looking to have some keys for you. It looks like the average ticket right now on eBay is going anywhere between $200 and $400. And I'm very interested. I know this is discussing with you, Kevin. I know we talked about why would someone sell it for $200? I mean, that's just
yeah. I mean, it seems like an awful lot of work to go through for like $20. But like I was saying earlier, I guess it's kind of maybe for those people that said, okay, I've got a third person coming. I go ahead and bought the ticket, and then boom, third person can't come. So now at this point, I'm just trying to get my money back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's tickets available on eBay for as little as $200. Last I looked, I think I even saw some for $198, $199. If you want to save a couple bucks.
I think I saw one for at cost price of $175 even.
Yeah, so a couple things that we're going to talk to you about. If you still intend on going to BlizzCon and you missed the initial sales, if you're considering something like going through eBay, you have to be very, it's always buyer beware. You have to be very, very careful, because you just try to make sure that the person that you're purchasing tickets from has been on eBay for a while. They have good feedback. Don't pick someone who just created their account the day that the tickets went on sale. That's a surefire way to get jacked out of all your cash, because they have no track record, and they don't probably feel liable for anything. But something else to really keep in mind is the way this is going to work, the way the whole system works, is that a name has to be attached to each ticket. And it looks like so whoever purchased the tickets, they buy the tickets, and they have until Friday, June 10th at 8 p.m. Pacific time to change the name of the attendee associated with each ticket. So what does this mean to you as an individual? It means you should not be purchasing tickets on eBay past Friday, June 10th at 8 p.m. Pacific time, because there is no way in hell you're actually going to get in and get a ticket. And that's something you got to be very, very careful about, because I guarantee it's going to happen. There's going to be tickets up there, and people are going to buy them. But just realize that, again, that's Friday, June 10th, 8 p.m. Pacific time. A name has to be attached to each one of the tickets. And if you try to, purchase one beyond that point, then there's no way you're going to get it. Because essentially what happens is, someone purchases the tickets, and then they say, okay, this person's going on this ticket, this person's going on that ticket. And then the name of those people has to actually show up with a photo ID at the event.
Right, so if you purchase it after the 10th, you're going to have to meet the person that you're buying it from at BlizzCon. They're going to have to go to BlizzCon, pick the ticket up, and hand it to you.
And what are the chances of that happening?
Right.
I mean, let's be realistic. Unless someone lives in Anaheim, what do you think they're going to fly themselves out there just to purchase the ticket to give it to you? Especially if especially if it's only going for like $250, only not that much above what the initial price was. Like, there's no way they're going to find airfare that cheap.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot of money to be made there.
Exactly. So just be wary if you're still looking to go to BlizzCon. Now, I guess something else we can talk about is I'm sure that there are going to be, I don't want to, don't quote me on this, but I'm sure there's going to be other options available to get BlizzCon tickets. I feel like there must be some giveaways between now and then. Do you think Blizzard is going to do something like that?
Yeah, previously what they've done is, they're like, all right, if you still haven't gotten a ticket, there's still 15 more, and you can do this, this, and this to get in, or stuff like that. There's going to be, I want to say there's going to be contests beforehand that they're going to do to give away a couple of tickets here and there. But, I mean, nothing major. I'm pretty sure that they're not going to do another sale. They did that, I think, the first year and sold tickets for $40 cheaper because they just didn't sell out. But, I mean, every other year, the tickets have sold in minutes, seconds. It's crazy. So, I mean, for the most part, if you haven't gotten a ticket by now and you don't want to buy one off eBay, which we don't really recommend, you can buy the virtual ticket, which they haven't announced the date for. But usually it's a couple of days before BlizzCon. So, I mean, you get to watch everything, but you don't get to go. But otherwise, there's no hope. I'm sorry.
There's no hope. Look at this guy. Unbelievable.
I'm sorry.
So Frozen, obviously you're across the pond. What chances of you going to BlizzCon? Is that something that have you ever considered that? Or are you kind of more of a virtual ticket guy, or do you just kind of wait until everything's up and on the internet?
So yeah, my chances of going are probably somewhere in between 0 and none. I'd have to pay for the airfare myself, and it gets kind of costly to go across the Atlantic. So, the past years I've waited a couple of days and waited for all the updates and the videos to go up, and I figure I'm gonna do the same thing this year. I'm fine with not getting everything the moment it's released.
I know a lot of people aren't, so that's why I asked.
It's craziness. I have to be the first one to see it.
And that actually, I guess we could talk about this for a moment. That brings up a very interesting point, I suppose. I know that when I first released the video announcing that Blizzard ticket sales were announced, I had a lot of comments from fans of Blizzard for overseas who were kind of bummed out that they couldn't make the event just because it's kind of too absurd. And so the response obviously by Blizzard, the way to try to deal with this, I'm sure largely in part that's why they have so much emphasis on the virtual ticket. Have you ever looked at the virtual ticket, or do you know much about it, or is that something again you just kind of wait until the day after?
No, I know what the virtual ticket is, and I considered buying it last year. But I mean, the problem is, we have there's a 9-hour time difference, on top of the traveling. So I have to stay up pretty late to watch all of these things live. So
Yeah.
I'd rather much go to bed, and when I wake up, we have news posts on Diablo fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess though, if anyone who is considering the virtual ticket, I would have to say that the coverage is pretty extensive. In fact, I know one year, I can't remember which one it was, but I know at one point I just used the free version because there's a free variant for all the major.
Is there really?
Yeah.
Yep.
For some of the major things, you have a free version, and then the purchase version lets you have access to whatever you want,
channels and
basically.
stuff.
Yeah.
The free version gives you access to the main stage, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
whatever panel is there.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
So, I mean, that's a really good option. I mean, I know, unfortunately, for a lot of people who don't live in the States, that's kind of the only option. But it is good to know that they have put a lot of effort into it, and it actually is pretty good. And if you don't want to purchase it, like we just mentioned, you can still see the main stage. That's still an option for you. So yeah, there you go.
I mean, as of this year, though, I mean, Diablo 3 beta is already going to be out by the time we get to BlizzCon, because as we know, it's supposed to be, third quarter this year, July. So between July and September, Blizzard's not until the end of October. So I mean, for Diablo fans, you're not really going to be missing much. There's not much else they can tell us. I mean, yeah, I guess there's going to be Diablo panels where we can ask questions and find out just a little bit more. But for the most part, we're already going to be in beta for at least a couple months.
And actually, this may not be the place for me to ask, but I'm just gonna do it anyways. With your prior experience with a press pass, Kevin, I know I have access to a press pass thanks to some lovely people at Diablo fans. Wink, nudge.
What can I say?
But yeah. In terms of asking questions, do you get to cut the lines for questions? Are we going to be first in line to ask questions?
I haven't actually tried before.
But you don't have to, right? I mean, you get like a special question.
Right. So there are like press behind the scenes Q&A interview things that you get to sit in, where it's just like 10 people.
Oh man, everyone's super jelly right now.
Yeah. So I mean, last year I don't even remember who we talked to. I think Magistrate went while I sat in one of the panels. But yeah, and then we have the cool community summit. So we have plenty of chances to talk to them. We don't have to worry about doing it through BlizzCon.
And we got the VIP room.
Yeah, basically.
Crystal and champagne, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's basically how it goes down.
No, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be pretty exciting. So yeah, there you have it. So that's pretty much it in terms of BlizzCon. I'm sure as we get closer to the event, we'll be talking a little bit more about it. And again, even though Diablo is probably going to be at the forefront of this BlizzCon, but we're going to be in the beta, so most Diablo fans are going to be pretty satisfied with the amount of beta content they're getting. But I'm sure there's still going to be bits of information that we want to look at. And, I guess we can say there's a good chance if the beta goes well that we may be getting an announced date during BlizzCon.
Actually, that's been something that I've been thinking about. I guess I'm going to say it right now. We're going to hear an announced date at BlizzCon. Because, I mean, as far as Diablo goes, that's about all they can tell us. I mean, I guess maybe we'll have like a lore panel or something like that. But
they don't. They usually don't give a lot of stuff away at those. It's kind of wait and find out, or we can't answer that, or
Right, basically. So
yeah, and I mean, obviously they don't want to ruin the storyline for the game, and that's why they're so hush hush about that stuff. So
yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they gave us a release date.
Well, yeah, there you go. So I kind of expect that as well. And like I said, it will depend on. I mean, if something like tragic happens with the beta. Then maybe there'll be God forbid, like maybe I'm in a PvP match and I bring down the entire servers of pure awesomeness. I mean, who knows what's gonna happen, but no, I mean,
Chuck Norris gets his hands on Diablo PvP beta.
Unless something absurd happens, then I'm kind of along those same lines of thinking, we'll probably get that release date during BlizzCon, but once more, we will have to wait and see. All right, so we're going to be going into the bulk of the podcast right now, and what we're going to be doing specifically is something we haven't really done much before at all. As you initially heard at the start of this podcast, PhrozenDragon here is the resident lore expert of DiabloFans.com, and as such, we're going to be kind of going a little bit in depth about lore. Now, we did release the Diablo Lore video, kind of a recap of the events prior to Diablo 1, and that's actually going to be a 3-part series. Part 2 and 3 are going to cover the lore of Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. But for people without the patience who want to wait for the produced version, or for maybe people who just kind of want a little brief synopsis right now, a little bit sooner, that's what we're going to be doing for you. So I understand, Frozen, we're going to take a kind of a brief trip through Diablo history, starting with the Sin War trilogies, which what are those? Those are all the events prior to Diablo 1. Is that correct?
Yes, they're all prior, and this is going to be like a summary of, the summaries that are going to come out. So
yeah. So just kind of bring you up to speed at the big players, the big events, and then we're going to quickly cover over Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. And this again is just to bring you up to speed. At that point, we can do some hypothesizing about the possibilities in Diablo 3. I'm sure, Frozen, you have all sorts of zany, crazy ideas. so we'll be interested to hear those. So I guess without further ado, Frozen, why don't you take it away?
We can begin our little trip with Frozen the Magic Dragon. and then this is where Cyber does the little...
Through Magic Candyland.
Yeah, this is where Cyber does the sound effects.
Oh, man. All right, let's get this show on the road here. All right, Frozen, take it away, bud.
Yeah, so everyone knows that Heaven and Hell are fighting each other, and this has been going on since, time began. And how Sanctuary was set up was that Inarius, an angel, and Lilith, a demon, both very powerful in their own right, they kind of got tired of this fighting because Heaven and Hell, they were constantly warring with each other, but there was no end to the conflict. So they basically got in touch with each other, figured out that there were other there were other beings similar to them, and they rounded up a lot of angels and demons who felt the same way, and they basically just left. And they settled on Sanctuary, but of course, Heaven and Hell weren't too happy with, they were deserters, so they had to hide themselves. So they created the World Stone, and the World Stone, hid Sanctuary so that neither Heaven nor Hell, they didn't know it was there, where it was, and in there they kind of lived, and it was pretty nice, and it was pretty decent until humans appeared. And as it turns out, angels and demons, angel and demon couplings. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I actually asked Bashiok this on Twitter, and humans were not created through any form of sexual intercourse. It was kind of like a creation from essences or whatever. But humans are. It's like they were created
kind of
from
anticlimactic.
Yeah,
literally.
But I mean, have you seen some of these demons? I mean, that shit would not work.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, Lilith.
Lilith is supposedly super hot.
Yeah, exactly.
I think her brother says that every being covets Lilith, wants to be with Lilith. So
wouldn't say that, right?
True, but then again, they seem to hate each other. So
that's also a good point.
Anyway, so the humans were created, and everything would have been fine, except they turned out to have this tremendous potential. I mean, they could become way more powerful than angels and demons were. So this created a bit of a problem. Inarius, he thought they were impure, vile things, and he thought they threatened him, so he wanted to kill them all. Lilith, on the other hand, felt like these would make the perfect soldiers. If she could bend them to her will, I mean, Heaven and Hell could both be conquered by the humans, the Nephilim at this time. So they were kind of disagreeing there. And Inarius, since he wielded the power of the World Stone, he was way more powerful than everyone else. So there was no way Lilith could, beat him in a conflict. So what she did instead was she killed every angel and demon rebel except for Inarius and herself, which left just the humans. And she knew that Inarius could not stand being alone on Sanctuary. So this essentially forced him to spare them. And for this, Inarius cast Lilith out of Sanctuary, and she was basically banished. And once again, everything was fine. Inarius used the World Stone to subdue the powers of the humans, so they became like regular humans. They lived until they're 80, they farm, they die, no magical powers. Until Lilith returned. It's not known how she did that, but she came back. Plot point, she needed to come back.
Right.
So she came back, and she started molding this human who's called Ildysian. He's the main character of the Sin War novels. She started molding him and boosting his latent powers. And the whole book kind of revolves around his struggle first against Lilith's brother, Lucian, who is the leader of the Triune, which we know will return in D3, the Temple of the Triune, which is a church that is led by the Primevals through disguises on Sanctuary. So first it's about him, then the focus shifts towards Odyssean kind of fighting against Inarius and liberating the entire human race from angelic and demonic oppression. That's kind of the theme of the books. And it all ends with basically Odyssean becomes God, and he defeats the angelic and hellish armies that are beginning to invade Sanctuary at the end of the books. Kind of a spoiler there. Maybe we should add a spoiler warning.
I was just thinking the same thing.
We should or maybe cut that out. I don't know if people want to know about that stuff. But anyway, it ends with a pact between heaven and hell, in which they agree that Sanctuary is supposed to develop on its own terms, and humanity should, reach its potential and make its own choices. And that kind of leads directly into the lore we know from Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. So as summarized as it can be, that's basically the Sin War novels. There's a whole lot more to it. But
right, so this is pre-Diablo 1. We haven't gotten to the games at all yet, just the Sin War trilogy novels.
And before we continue, I guess it's really important to say, I know that these come highly recommended by both of you have read all three.
Yes, I've actually, and I'm pretty sure Frozen has also. I've read all of the Diablo books, and essentially, the Sin War trilogy is canon and it's part of the lore, whereas the other books, I guess, in the Diablo Archive and the Moon of the Spider, they're kind of just like side stories. They're pretty awesome, and they're definitely great reads, but they're not more so. They're kind of like Hellfire. They're just kind of expansions onto the cool stuff.
Sort of, yeah. And yeah, it is canon. Bashiok has posted that the Sin War novels are canon, so.
And for those, clarification for those who don't know.
So yeah, and there's also some other interesting points that are revealed in the Sin War. I think a lot of you remember the armor set for the Necromancer in Diablo 2 that was called Tragul's Avatar, right? It was a Necromancer set, and it turned you into a vampire when you had the complete set, right? And you got the fire skills from the sorceress.
Yep.
Now that is a necromancer, and it turns out in the Sin War novels that Tragul is, and he's mentioned to be a god in earlier manuals and stuff, but it turns out he's an actual dragon. He's the guardian of Sanctuary. He's always existed with it, and he was kind of shaped when the angels and demons came there and started molding Sanctuary to their needs. So he's tied to it, and he is the god of the necromancers, and he's really the the defender of Sanctuary, and that's why the necromancers are so important in the lore, and why it's very likely that if we'll see them in the in one way or another in the Diablo 3 is what I was going to say.
Yeah,
right.
And actually, just sorry to interject really quickly. I think that's something that's really neat because neat that you bring it up because when we think about the Diablo franchise, dragons isn't typically the first thing that comes to mind. And I think that's a really cool addition, having this dragon being kind of the protector of Sanctuary. I mean, specifically Diablo brings to mind heaven and hell, angels and demons, and then you look at something like Warcraft for dragons and goblins and all this stuff. So I really think that's a neat addition, and I think it's almost perfect. Like when I first heard about that, I was like, that is probably one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Just because
who doesn't like dragons?
Yeah, but it's not just the fact that it's dragon. It almost makes enough sense that it belongs there. You know what I mean? So.
It should probably maybe I should clarify a bit. I mean, he's not like a physical dragon. He doesn't have these leather scales and fire breath. He's actually like he lives in his own. Right? Yeah,
as I understood it, he's like a constellation kind of a thing.
He looks like that, but he lives in his own dimension that is kind of linked to Sanctuary, and his scales are like the pieces of
memories, right?
It's like the pieces of people's lives. So when you look at him, you can see all these flashes of memory. So you can see people's pasts and people's present, and actually what's going to happen in the future as well. So he's kind of everyone on Sanctuary is linked to him in some way.
Oh, so So if people want to find out the story to Diablo 3, they just have
ask
to talk to
Dragon.
him. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, a character in the books actually tried to do that, but Tragul doesn't let him see what happens. So
he's not
no one
playing
has done it to date.
Well, all right, that's pretty awesome. So that's I definitely really enjoy that, and I think the lore is definitely really, really interesting. Are we thinking about taking a look as well into Diablo 1 and Diablo 2? Taking a kind of brief synopsis of those as well?
Oh yeah, we should also mention the angels from the Sin War, which I think a lot of people want to know about. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot remember like how Tyrael appeared in Diablo 2, and he was kind of helping you out, and it was always kind of hinted at that the leadership of heaven disapproved of what he was doing, but we never knew what that leadership was. It was kind of like these weird things somewhere. And it turns out that Tyrael is actually part of that leadership, and heaven is ruled by a council called the Angiris Council, or the Angiris Council. And there are currently 5 members. One of them is Tyrael, and the other are 4 people who only appear. They only appear in one chapter, actually. But they are Imperius, Itherael, Malthael, and Ariel, who is Ariel is female. Itherael is neither. That's a little weird. And the other 3 are all male in appearance, as far as angels go. And a lot of people, I mean, if you've visited the Diablo fans forums or anywhere, you have probably seen discussions about, Imperius. And what happens is, at the end of the books, there is a vote where heaven tries to figure out what they want to do with Sanctuary. I mean, should we destroy this place, or should we let it live and see where humans go? And what happens? And what happens is that Ariel, who is kind of a compassionate angel,
she's the Archangel of Love, right?
We only know that Tyrael is the Archangel of Justice, and the other 4 are speculation, but she might be of love or like compassion or benevolence or something along those lines.
Okay.
She wants to save Sanctuary. And then there is Malthael, who is all black, and just looking at him kind of makes you more than uneasy. It's like you get nightmares just from looking at him. He's usually proposed to be the Archangel of Death or something like that. There is Itherael, who is gray robes and no gender, and he abstains his vote. So he's probably some kind of neutral angel or something.
Obviously.
Like.
Can't even pick a gender.
Exactly. And the final one is Imperius, who is this, kind of big angel, and he has a blazing sword as an emblem, red robes. And he's like, we gotta kill these humans right now, because they're vile, they're pure, they're tainted by demons, and they gotta go. Unfortunately, he is, voted down by the rest of the council because Tyrael sides with humans, and this is where his affection, if you want to call it, with humans starts. So that's why Imperius is the only one who's really against humanity, and that's why a lot of people have theorized that if we're going to see angels in D3 or fight angels, then Imperius is probably going to be related to or at the heart of it.
And I guess just to interject quickly as to that too, I know that Kevin, we had talked about spotting holy damage, or was it holy resistance or light resistance or something?
Yeah,
like that?
it was holy. Basically, in two different screenshots. At one point they used arcane, and the other point they used holy.
So I mean that almost leads us to believe. I mean, what are we taking holy damage from but
right.
angels? So that's that's a quick aside. Obviously, we could speculate into infinity on stuff like that, but that's an interesting thought. The possibility of fighting angels in this 3rd series of the game,
or an expansion. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's always true. So I guess this leads us up into Diablo 1.
Yeah. This is your part, Sixen.
All right. Well, I mean, essentially,
Summary.
I've got the game enders right here. So, I mean, in Diablo 1, I think we all kind of know what happens. We go through a bunch of stuff, and then boom, we kill Diablo and shove a soulstone in our head. And now the warrior takes care of Diablo until he walks over, and now he's corrupt again. And this is kind of what goes on through Diablo 2. Essentially, it's what is the game? Marius, is that who it is? Frozen.
Yeah, Marius.
So we're following through Marius, who follows the Wanderer, who is the Diablo 1 warrior. And as he kind of goes through his corruption, turns into Diablo, and now we kill Mephisto and Diablo again, and now we kill Baal and shatter their soul stones in the Hellforge.
Cliff notes.
Yes,
Notes version.
yes. Hey, I go big or go home. That's the big stuff.
So, are there any major details that you'd like to add to that, Frozen? Obviously, besides the basic outline of how those games took place.
Well, I mean, the gist of it was that the three were banished to Sanctuary from Hell by the lesser evils, Asmodan, Belial, Andariel, and Duriel. And we don't know why. That's a heavy lore issue. We're not going to go into here how that works. But essentially, those three ended up on Sanctuary, caused all sorts of trouble, and then were imprisoned within the Soul Stones. And the Diablo 1 and the Diablo 2 games, Diablo 1 focuses on how Diablo kind of gets out of his prison, which is deep down under the Tristram Cathedral. The warrior comes down. He thinks he's beat him. And then he shoves the Soul Stone into his head, and Diablo walks out through his body, sort of. Yeah. And then in Diablo 2, Diablo finds his two brothers and frees them. And that's really when Diablo goes back to Hell to kind of prepare their forces, probably to quell the rebellion and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Mephisto stays behind and gets killed pretty quickly. And Baal, as we know, goes on to Mount Aria to corrupt the World Stone. And if you want to read more about the World Stone, I recently wrote a pretty long article on Diablo fans. It goes really.
It's a novel. Let's call it what it is now.
It really goes into depth on how the whole World Stone issue works. So if you're really interested in the lore, you should go check that out.
We'll include that in the links in the thread at the end.
Mm-hmm. Most certainly. So yeah, I mean, and that's I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. That's that's really major bullet points. Those are the major lore things that take place. Pretty much up until the end of Diablo 2. Now, in terms of speculation, based off of kind of where we left off, I know I'm sure, Frozen, that you've got tons of ideas. What do you think? Logically,
I kind of have one idea, but I've narrowed.
Okay. You've narrowed it down.
Before we jump into it, let me just kind of lay it down. Basically, we're looking at Diablo 3 is about 20 years after Diablo 2, and all the events that we just talked about already happened. Right. So fast forward 20 years, and boom, now we're in Diablo 3. Okay, Frozen, go ahead.
Okay, so if you watched any of the BlizzCon panels, they haven't been very forthcoming with the story at all. But I mean, obviously, we know there are demons. That's kind of a given. So Hell is doing something. And I know Jay Wilson and other developers always say, the World Stone was destroyed 20 years ago, but Hell hasn't invaded, and nobody knows why. And that's true. Nobody knows why the hell nothing has happened. So that's kind of something we're going to have to figure out in the games. I don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, there are a lot of things that could happen, but, everyone's kind of assuming that the three primevals, or at least Diablo, is going to come back in one way or another. Because, I mean, let's face it, we all want to fight Diablo in a Diablo game. And maybe it would make sense from a story perspective not to have Diablo in it, but I mean, even it would feel a little weird, like getting to the last boss and Diablo hasn't even he was dead. Oh, all right.
Well, Jay Wilson confirmed that Diablo is going to be coming back, and
right.
I think we know Asmodan's going to be the boss of Act 2.
Well, no, I mean, people say that all the time. I mean, we know that Belial is involved in Act 2. I mean, and we know that Diablo makes an appearance, and I mean, I guess you could equate that with fighting Diablo, but. I mean, for the longest of times, I haven't been convinced that we're going to fight Diablo. It just says that Diablo is going to be there. And, I mean, the most common theory that, I read at least, and that I know is supported by CyberDragon is, that Diablo is coming back and he's kind of fusing with his brothers and you get this mega primeval. I hate that theory. I think it kind of dilutes. I mean, if you have these three primevals, these three characters that you kind of started to building into separate entities through the Sin War novels and all of that, and you're just going to shove them together and say, like, Mephisto and Baal, they don't matter. It's all about Diablo. And in a sense, I can see from an average, forgive me for saying this, but from an average gamer perspective who doesn't really care about the story, who just wants a big ass monster, I can see how that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that Blizzard doesn't do that. I mean, to me, it feels like Power Rangers and like Digimon. I
Like a sword.
don't want that.
Oh man, that is too much. They all morph into one giant
Right.
Megatron crap. That's good.
So yeah, I'm hoping that we if we see Diablo, then I mean, what I'd really like to see is Diablo kind of kind of being a presence throughout all the series. Like maybe he makes a cameo in cutscenes, or maybe his agents or his speech. Like we feel his presence throughout the acts. But I mean, the final boss isn't him. Like it could be like Asmodan, and he's sent there by Diablo or something, and then it kind of leads up into, okay, whatever happened in Diablo 3, like now we dealt with whatever Diablo tried to do, and now in the expansions we're gonna take the fight to him or something. I mean,
That would actually be pretty cool.
I hope something like that would happen. But I'm getting more and more convinced by the Diablo is the final boss line of thought. The more the more people talk about it.
You know, it would be really cool, and I don't know, and you can tell me if this is way off base and if this is just not possible. I don't know if lore-wise this is even feasible, but we know that that these primevals can take over someone's body. I mean, it was Diablo who took over King Leoric, right?
Yeah.
That's
or
what
he tried to, he failed.
Yeah. How amazing would a possession variation
Of an angel?
Of what?
Of an angel? Is that where you're going with this?
No.
Going back to Power Rangers. Stop that.
If we take the thought that, okay, it's been said Diablo's in the game, but maybe not as a physical boss. Maybe he's in the background, and throughout the game he is attempting to possess the main characters, and you hear him like maybe whispering to you, or maybe the character themselves can experience a quote possession or an attempted possession. I think that something along those lines. I think that would be a neat mechanic. I know I've seen in games, like whisperings of something to you in the background. That's kind of supposed to be in the back of your head. But I think something like that could be a kind of a neat addition. But then again, I'm not certain. I mean, is it only possible for these primevals to possess one person at a time? So it'd be physically impossible.
It's possible actually in the books. Spoiler warning again, but we've spoiled everything. Screw that.
That's going to be the name of our podcast.
Yeah,
spoiler warning.
Okay, so in the books, Lilith, who we know, she actually possesses one of the characters in the book. We basically, she basically jumps into the body and she gets full control, almost full control. She's eventually, saved by the power of love. Well, what happens is she's inside this woman's Cerinthia's body and controls everything. And possession like that is certainly possible. What I think, however, is that the possession mechanic, and this also comes up a lot. I mean, it's Imperius, and it's Tyrael is corrupted, and it's the whole Soulstone possession thing. That's the three things people love to talk about when it comes to theorizing about Diablo lore. And in the possession department, people always have this idea that primevals need a host or a body to exist on Sanctuary. Like they need to possess someone to stay like on the human plane, or what you want to say. And that conclusion makes perfect sense from a game standpoint, because that's the only way we ever see them. But I mean, they pop in and out of Sanctuary constantly, or not constantly, but several times during the Sinmore novels, and there's no possession. I mean, they just step through, and that's that. They don't need that limitation. So
wasn't that wasn't before the Worldstone, was it?
That was while the Worldstone was in effect. Okay. But what happened? I mean, with the realistic solution is, okay, in Diablo 1, Diablo needed a host, and people say, yeah, that's because he needs a host to exist on the mortal plane. And I say, no, he needed a host because he was trapped in a stone, and stones don't breathe.
That's a good point.
It's kind of useful to have a body to move around with.
That's funny.
And that's the same with any of them. I mean, they were trapped inside. I mean, stones can't do shit, so they need to be inside someone to move.
Yeah, that's. I mean, and I wasn't even necessarily hypothesizing that because it was it made the most sense lore-wise. I just think that would be something that was neat if you were going along the game and constantly you had Diablo whispering things to you.
But I certainly think that's possible, and I think even if not for possession, because Diablo is described as having this power where just his mere presence makes you like experience your worst fears in your mind. So I mean, it's certainly a believable power for Diablo to exert on the heroes. I mean, so maybe.
That would
Yeah.
make for some pretty awesome gameplay.
And I guess one major thing that I would like to touch on, because I've heard a lot of kind of questions about this. We understand angels and demon couplings. They brought about the Nephilim, which are early variants of humans. And so we see humans in the game as kind of what we would expect. They're much like ourselves. The people in town, the blacksmiths, such as this. But then our heroes. Now, where do our heroes fall into place along the Nephilim human spectrum? Are they just humans that somehow retain their powers? And if so, how have they retained their powers? Because I'm not seeing every Joe and Sally in town using magical abilities and stuff like that. It's only our heroes, really. So where's that distinction, Frozen?
The thing is that the powers that the humans have, they in the books they're described as they need to be awoken inside of people. So it's not like you can maybe you can learn this on your own, but what happens is humans are like just normal, and then you kind of have to probe inside them. Someone who already has these powers kind of awakens something in them, and when it does, they kind of have this epiphany when they kind of like they suddenly realize that they have this potential. And that's how the people in the novels get their powers. So this is separate from like mages, because mages learn their powers and they're kind of manipulating the world outside, and the Nephilim powers kind of come from the inside. It's kind of the powers they have, by birth. So I always figured, and I mean, of course, when it comes to like your player character having a lot of power, you have to realize that a lot of gameplay issues go in here. Like you have to be powerful enough to beat them, and in this case, gameplay is just gonna have to dictate what happens, and you kind of have to fit this in. But I always imagined that the heroes we play are, people who've had these powers awakened in them,
especially
one way or
the
another. Well, exactly. Although the necromancer could have gotten help from Tragul and his skills as well, but yeah, because it gives them a lot of, it makes them. I mean, not just being able to cast spells, but being able to heal themselves and resist tremendous damage and stuff like that, which is precisely what happens to the character. So that's what I always imagined. I haven't really, there's no real way to explain that, outside of this, but they're probably somewhere around, like, I don't know, their powers are different from the Nephilim powers, but somewhere around Nephilim level, I'd say.
Yeah, that's I think that's I that seems like a pretty logical assumption too. I mean, it's almost like the idea that as humans, we only use a certain percentage of our brains, and there's people who think, oh, if we used everything, we'd be possible of ESP or levitation or all these absurd things. What is it? Chris Angel, he uses an extra percent not, but But no, that's I like that. I like the idea of awakening something within. We have powers that at our disposal that we just haven't tapped into. Kind of thought. That makes a lot of sense. And then I guess I obviously understand in all kind of fantasy realms, mages or magi or whatever, magi. It's a learned discipline, so that makes sense on that front as well. So. And
just a little disclaimer here. If anyone listening to this is saying like, "Ha, that's totally wrong," I maybe I missed some stuff here, but I'm kind of this is just kind of me summarizing some theories. So if anything's wrong, feel free to post a thread in the lore forum or PMing me or something, and I'll totally explain anything.
Yeah, send Frozen all your raging mail
for everything ever.
And if you don't know, Frozen is the lovely gentleman who wrote the synopsis for the lore series on the 4 Strategy Gaming YouTube page. So definitely big thanks to him. It's right in the credits, but can't be thanked enough between him and the artist. It's really all you guys who helped bring that series together. So hopefully we've clarified a little bit for you. I'm sure this is going to raise more questions than it brings about answers, but that's a good thing because that's getting us involved and maybe keeping our minds occupied while we kind of wait for Diablo information to trickle in from Blizzard up until the point of the beta.
And on the topic of the lore videos, I read the comments and I saw a couple of questions from people that I figured maybe we could clarify here. For those of you who watched the video and maybe had the same wonderings, if we should do that.
Yeah, sure. Let's just try to run through those really quick. And
Yeah,
then we can move
it's
on
just
to
the
next,
three questions and a little
yeah,
addendum.
Sure thing.
So the first one was by Ink Lincoln, and he asked what happened to Inarius and Lilith, and we actually forgot to explain that part in the video. That was a little oversight. So what happens to Inarius is that people would maybe remember that from D1, Diablo 1, he was said to be imprisoned in hell. And that's actually what happens in the Sin War. At the end of the Sin War, he is defeated and he is chained. And Mephisto comes to strike a deal with the Council in regards to the future of Sanctuary. And in return, he requests that he be given Inarius. So he takes Inarius back with him down to hell. And we have no idea what's happened to him after that, except for, the D1 lore where what happens? He's chained in this chamber of mirrors, and he's forced to look upon his own destroyed reflection. Because, Inarius is pretty self-centered and pretty vain, so...
He's like LL Cool J. He likes looking at himself.
Yeah, so a fitting punishment looking at his own ruined form. We don't know if that's accurate, but maybe. Also had a comment from Devil Hunter, who said that we failed to explain who Tal Rasha was. That's also true. We mentioned Tal Rasha, and he was in regards to Baal, and how Baal's soulstone was shattered, and the fragmented pieces could not hold himself. So Baal was partly put in the soulstone, and then Tal Rasha's body was used to complete the prison. And Tal Rasha was one of the leading mages of the Horadrim, who were hunting. The Horadrim were all the mage clans united under the guidance with the help of Tyrael, and they were sent to hunt the primevals. And Tal Rasha was the leading mage when Baal was captured, and he thought that he could contain Baal's essence. And as we learn in Diablo 2, that
similar to the warrior in Diablo 1 with
exactly
Diablo.
Pretty much the same thing, and that turned out not to be true. And there was also a comment by Apples 2O Apples, who said that not said, but kind of like commented that in Diablo 1 the cathedral was already built when the Horde Ring came there to imprison Diablo. They just took the old building and put him down there, and this has been retconned in Diablo 3. So now the Horadrim actually built the Tristram Cathedral. That's kind of a minor thing. And also another thing, we mentioned that Ulducin tied the World Stone to himself, which you can maybe assume that he did, but it's never actually stated. So Ulducin doesn't, Inarius has the World Stone at his disposal, and it's tremendously powerful. And Ulducin still manages to beat him with his inherent powers, so to speak, just grown to immense proportions. So maybe he uses the World Stone, maybe not. It's not entirely clear, but probably not. So that's that.
All right. So yeah, just a little bit of clarification for a couple of things in the lore series. So yeah, I guess.
Wait. I forgot to say what happened to Lilith. I forgot to happen was I totally forgot Lilith. Lilith was imprisoned in the void again by Inarius. If you can't do it the first time, you just do it again.
And then, of course, third time's a charm, so I guess we're going to have to wait and see on that.
Maybe she returns for a third trip, but yeah, as far as we know, she is still there, trapped in the void. So, but she is alive and may very well return in future games.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. So yeah, lots of lore in this particular podcast, and
I know my head's spinning right now.
That pretty much wraps it up for the main segment of our podcast. And let's go ahead and head on into the next portion, which is going to be this week's poll. All right, so this week's poll is going to be discussing runes. You want to go ahead and explain it to people, Kevin?
Yep. So essentially, we want to know what you are looking for with runestones. Like, what kind of effects would you prefer for the runestones? And we've got the first option is resource management. So basically, it lowers the skill cost, or it adds to your resource pool, whatever class you're playing. And then we've got adding more damage or some kind of damage effect, or adding that's the second option. The third option we have is adding like a different effect, not related to damage, but something like stun or poison damage or frost damage, something along those lines. The fourth option is changing how the skill plays out, so basically changing like a DOT to an AoE or something along those lines, or vice versa, whatever. And then the fifth, we have basically something that you can use for PvP instead of PvE. So go ahead and vote and just let us know what you think. And as of the last poll, we covered the last poll in the last podcast, and because it was just a couple of days ago, there's nothing. We didn't come up with anything new. Planning ahead of time that this was going to be the poll for this week.
Yep, there you have it. So, go ahead and head on over to DiabloFans.com. Make sure you sign in, and you're going to be able to vote right on the right-hand side of the main page. All right, so now we're going to move on to user questions. Now, the first question that we're going to be taking today comes from Kevin. Not this Kevin, but some other Kevin.
I was like, what?
Kevin asks, who's going to argue and discuss so much about PvE content now that Cyber is gone? We PvEers sure miss that guy. Cheers, of course, for the podcast team for making those great casts, and Cyber, of course. Well, now that Cyber's gone, I don't know what to tell you. We're going to have
hey, you guys are screwed. Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna have special guests like Frozen here. Frozen, are you a PvE fan?
I can safely assume that I am 100% a PvE guy.
There you go.
So whenever
it
we
must be a dragon thing.
Yeah.
there must always be a PvE dragon on the cast.
Yeah. So whenever Frozen's here, he can fight for it. And I'm not. I enjoy PvE. I know Kevin enjoys PvE as well. We're just excited for PvP. That's
exactly.
that competition is what excites most people.
Yeah, it's a manly thing.
Most normal people. But anyways, no, don't be too concerned. PvE is something we're definitely going to go into depth on. You should also realize, with so little information right now, there's only so much for us to talk about. We just don't know enough. The game's not in. Once the game's in beta, especially, I know we're going to be talking a lot about PvE content as things, as things kind of develop over time and as we learn more about the game. So don't be too concerned quite as of yet. Give it some time. All right, so the next question here comes from Simon, and the question is, so there are runestones in Diablo 3, but will there be runes or gems for the character's gear as well? Will there also be runic words or something like there was in Diablo 2? So here's a two-part question. We know about runestones. What about gems for gear? Well, we know that that's going to be there, but runes, runic words?
No, there's no rune words. Basically, Diablo 2, you can find runes and put them in an item in a certain order, and you get a rune word, which is something like crafting. Basically, you get a brand new item with some cool stats and a cool name, and no, that's not going to be the case this time around.
So we're just that's not going to be around, but again, I think with the customization of runes and the gems for your gear as well, I think that's plenty, in all honesty.
Actually, on this note, I have a question from somebody on Diablo Fans. His name is Worldstone Shard, and he asks can you put runestones in traits as well as skills? And I believe no. The answer is you can only put runestones in skills, not traits as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, especially since traits are passives, so
right.
It's not much of an effect to change.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and we're going to be taking one more question. This question is going to be coming from John. John asks, will there be 4 or 5 acts in Diablo 3? I know they have arenas coming, but will they offer just regular PvP on a player map as well? Some sort of a duel-type fight, such as WoW typically has. All right, so number of acts, what are we looking at?
4 acts.
Yeah.
And in terms of
not
PvP,
counting expansions. So we got 4 acts in the normal game, and then possibly another act or whatever they do in expansions. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. And in terms of PvP, as we've talked about in the past, it's just going to be the arena. I'm not even gonna rule out duels as a possibility. But Hostiles
1v1 duels in the arenas or something.
But Hostile is not going to be an option unless they just do a 180 on us out of nowhere. We've heard everything confirming that going Hostile in the single player, the co-op experience, isn't going to be in the game. So
right.
All right, well, that pretty much does it for this week's DiabloCast. So thank you guys so much for listening. Obviously, a big thanks as well to FrozenDragon for keeping us all up to date on the lore. So for Frozen, for Sixen, this has been Force. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
All right, take it easy, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Now I know what I should have said on the USA thing when you asked me. I was totally baffled. But,
it's fine. No, it's right. It was funny.
Cold Stone is awesome. we don't have that in Sweden. Great.
Actually, I just have to throw this out here. Tyler was saying in one of the previous casts that he asked a Russian guy if he wanted a brownie, and the guy had no idea what a brownie was. So do you have brownies in Sweden?
I guess there's a slight difference between that and what we call kladdkaka. which
shit.
I guess
Please,
is
one more time.
kladdkaka. How do you translate that? Like kladd. That's
know.
like.
I don't know. I don't know. You're asking
Don't
the
ask
wrong
me.
guy.
I mean, maybe there is a wait.
Cloud of cock. I was born in Germany, but I'm
Were you really?
American though. So
You're a germ.
a germ of a germ, yeah. There, that's a good
Like
one.
Born in an army
Yuck,
base or
yuck.
something like that.
Yeah, I was born on an army base.
There you go.